Alright, so in the previous video, we set up the project. So in this video, we'll actually be able to perform some of the auth logic in our app. Hold on just 1 second. I am offering free coaching to those of you who need help in JavaScript development, Flutter development, and most front-end or full-stack JavaScript frameworks. If you're not opposed to receiving some help, message me through Discord at 8dang. I'll be sure to include my tag below, but remember, I might not be able to help with everything, but I'll try my best. But with that out of the way, let's get back into the video. The first thing we're going to do, in the routes folder, create a new folder called auth. And once you created this folder, we're going to create a new file inside this folder called +layout.server.ts. Alright, so once you open this file, let's import redirect and layout server load from $$types. Then we'll create a load function that'll get access to the locals, and the locals is just a reference to this right here, to the return of this function. No, not the return of this function, but to the locals right here. They're referencing the same thing. And then we're going to check if the auth store is valid. So if the auth store points to an actual user, then we're going to redirect. Right now, we need to run npm run dev in the terminal so we can get autocomplete on the auto-generated types. So once you run npm run dev, the error should go away. So then in the auth folder, let's create another file called +page.server.ts. So then we're going to import redirect and page server load instead of layout server load. And we're going to create a load function that'll take in nothing. And all we're going to do is just redirect us to the create account. But in the auth folder, let's create a new file called +layout.svelte. Alright, so once you have the +layout.svelte open, we're going to create a main. And inside here, we're going to create a section that's going to contain an h1 and a paragraph. And it's just going to contain some dummy text. You could do this by just typing lorem and then typing in the number of words you want next to it, and then just pressing enter if you have emit enabled in VS Code. So then below this section, we're going to create an article, and it's going to contain the slot, and the slot is pretty much just going to be the content that we're going to be rendering for each of the pages. So then we're going to create a style tag. We're going to make sure that the main has the full height of the window, and we're going to make sure that has a display of flex. And right here, it's just display, and it's just saying that we just have one child right here in the display because this is just the small version of the screen. So then we're going to say that the article has a display of flex and also takes up the full height of the screen. So in the section, we're going to say display none. So we're going to say by default, the section is not going to be displayed. And right here, we're going to create an h1 that the color and the font size and the paragraph, obviously. So then we're going to create a media query that says if our screen is greater than 550 pixels, we're going to say that the main has a grid template column of 2 items that both take up equal width, and the section is going to be display of flex instead of display of none, and the paragraph is going to actually have a width. In this media query, we're going to say if the width of the screen is greater than 700 pixels, we're going to say that the division between the article and the section is going to be 1.2 to 0.8, which we're going to see how that looks like in a second. So then let's see how that looks like. So right here in the terminal, we could add right here, we could add a new terminal, and then we're going to open up PocketBase inside of this terminal. And then we're going to say /PocketBase serve. And then in the node server, in the node terminal, we're going to open up localhost. You should see 404 not found because we haven't created any +page.svelte yet. So then in the auth folder, let's create a new folder called create-account. And let's create 2 new files. One called +page.svelte and the other one called +page.server.ts. So if we go over to the console, you see that we should have a gradient background on one side and a white background on the other. So in the +server.ts file, we're going to import redirect, and we're going to export a constant, which is going to be the actions. So this is going to contain the form actions that we're going to create for this file. Then we're going to say that the default action is going to take in the locals and the request, and we're going to check to see if the actual auth store is valid. So if the user is authenticated, we're just going to redirect them to /. So then we're going to get access to the form data. So the form data is going to be access the inputs of the form. So then we're going to get access to the name input, email input, password input, and then we're going to create a try catch block, and let's validate the input for the try catch block. So right here you see that we're going to make sure that the name is actually a string and that the name has a length greater than 1. Same thing goes for email, and the same thing goes for password, but instead of 0, we're going to say the at least a length of 8. So then we're going to check to see if a user with the same name exists, And if it does, we're just going to throw a new error and it'll be caught right here. So if there isn't a user with the same name, we're going to create an instance of a user. So we're going to create a document containing the name, password, email, and the email visibility. So then after we create this instance of the user, we log into that instance. Because this create method doesn't log us into the input, we have to actually auth with password right here. So then in the catch, we say if the error is an instance of error, we pass back the name, email, and password, and we pass the message back. So then we're going to do the same thing, but if it's not an error, we can't really know what the message is. So we just say unknown error occurred while trying to create an account. So then if everything goes according to plan, we're just going to throw a redirect to slash. And now let's open the pluspage.svelte file inside the create account. So once you have the pluspage.svelte file open, we're going to create a script tag with a lang of ts, and then we're going to import link and button, which are two components that we're going to create after we create this component. So then we export let form, so we get access to the form data that gets passed back to us, and we get access to the name, email, and password of the form data, and we check to see if there's an error. So then we create a svelte head saying that the title of this page is going to be create account. So then we're going to create a section with the class of container. And then in here, we're going to create a form with the method of post, and we're going to use enhance, saying that once we get the result back, we're not going to reset the form, but we are going to invalidate all of the loading functions. Basically, we're going to restart all the loading functions to make sure that we are actually logged in. So then we're going to create a heading with an h1 and a paragraph tag. And then we're going to create 3 input fields and a button inside of this. So the first input field is going to be the name, as we saw in the load function, and it's just going to be a placeholder and it's going to bind its value to name. Then we're going to create an email input with the same principles, but instead of type of text, we're going to say type email. Then we're going to create another input container for the password, and below we're going to say if there's an error, we display the error inside a paragraph. And we create a button with the variant of primary, basically saying that we want the background to be pink, or at least the accent color of the app. And then we're going to say the size is large, so we want it to take up the full width, and we want it to have extra padding. And we say that it's going to be disabled if the name.length is 0, email.length is 0, or password.length is less than 8. And below we're going to say we're going to link to the login page just in case they have an account. So then we're going to say, do you already have an account? And we're going to link them to ./auth/login. And then we're going to say that the terms. So then below, we're going to create a style tag. And we're going to style the container so that it is a display of flex and it is vertically aligned and it takes up the full width of its container or of its parent. So then we're going to create a form. And the form is going to be aligned vertically and it's just going to have a gap in between each of the items. Then the heading is also going to be like the form, but instead of gap 1 rem, it's going to only have 4 pixels in between each of the items. So then we're going to create the style for the heading, the paragraph, the input field. So each of the input fields is also aligned vertically, but with less of a gap than the form. So in the input container is also going to be aligned vertically. The h2, the input, we're going to say at the border is the tertiary color that we created in the previous video. And then that the background color is going to be the secondary color, so the input actually stands out. So then we're going to make sure that the error actually has a red color to it, so if there's an error, the user can see it and see that they've committed an error. Then we're going to say that the link right here, this link right here, is going to be aligned vertically, and the terms right here. So now let's close this file, and in the lib folder, let's create a new folder called components, and inside of here, let's create a new file called button.svelte. So in the button.svelte file, we're going to create a script tag with the language property set to TS. And it's going to have 4 properties. One seeing if it's disabled, one seeing the alignment of the button, one seeing the size of the button, and one seeing the variant of the button. And the variant just refers to the actual style of the button. So then let's create a color with the classes of variant, size, and align. So each of these is going to be like a mix and match. And the disabled property is going to determine whether this button is disabled or not. And you see the shorthand on click. This shorthand on click is just going to transfer this on click to the parent component. So we're not going to listen to this on click in this function, in this component, but the parent that is calling this button component can listen to this button function. So then let's create a style tag, and let's say that the button has a transition and a text align of center by default, and that the button disabled has a cursor of not allowed, and that the and that when the button is focused, we're going to give it an outline with the accent color. So then we're going to create two styles. Both of these refer to the alignment that we have right here, the align. And then we're going to say that the icon size is just going to have a fixed width, but all of the content is going to be centered. Then we're going to say that the primary color. So we're going to say that the primary button, both the destructive and the primary, when they are disabled, is going to have a background color of the secondary color. And then we're going to create the destructive, and we're going to say that the exact same thing right here. And now for the outline, we give it a border, and now right here we check to make sure that these are not disabled, and we give them a background color of the secondary color. And now in the outline disabled, if it's disabled, we're going to give it an opacity of 0.6, and the ghost is not going to have a border. So now in the components folder, we're going to create a new file called link.svelte. So now this link function is going to be very similar to the button function, but the only difference is going to have that it's going to have a href property, and it's not going to have a disable property. So then we're going to create a script tag with a language property set to TS, and we're going to have four properties. One is the href, so where the link is pointing to, the variant, the size, and the align, very similar to the button. And we're going to set them to the class of the anchor tag. This onClick can be listened to by the parent function, by the parent component. And then we're going to create a style tag. And just like before, it's going to have very similar styles, but it's not going to have the disabled styles. So you can find all this code in the GitHub link in the description. So now, once you're done with this file, we can close this. And now let's go over to localhost to see how this looks like. So you see, create an account, and the background is black. And now let's type out a name, test@email.com, test. And now let's create the account. And you see 404 not found, but if we go to storage, let's go to storage right here. You see that our authentication token is created. So now let's go back to auth. And now we could open up the PocketBase admin UI. So right here in the PocketBase terminal, we could open up the admin UI, and you see that the user has been created. So now, if we go to the login page, it's going to say 404 not found. So let's create the login page right now. So now, in the auth folder, let's create a new folder called login. And here we're going to create two new files, one called pluspage.svelte and the other one called pluspage.server.ts. So now once you have this pluspage.server.ts file, we're going to create the actions constant. So it's going to refer to the default action that's going to take in the locals and the request. So this is going to be very similar to the create account form action, but we're not going to take in any name. The reason we don't take any name is because we're not creating any account. We're just logging into an account using the email and password. So then we're going to check to see if they're actually logged in, and we're going to say add the form data, and then we're going to get access to the form data. Right here, we're going to get access to both properties, the email and the password. And then we're going to create a try catch block, then validate the input to make sure that the email actually is valid. No, not that it's valid, but it's not empty, and that the password is actually valid. The reason I don't validate the input is because PocketBase by default validates the input for us. So then below this validation, we're going to log in with the password right here. So if you compare this file to the plusserver.ts file right here, you see that we both log in using the auth with password function. So in the catch block, we're going to check to see if the error is an instance of error. And if it is, we're just going to pass in the message back with the email and password. And we're going to do the same thing, but if it's not an error, we can't actually send any message. So we're just going to send a message like this. And if everything goes according to plan, we just redirect them to the home page. So now in the pluspage.server.ts file, now in the pluspage.svelte file. So now in the pluspage.svelte file inside the login folder, we create a script tag with the language property set to TS. And we're going to import the link and button. And we're going to set the form to the action data so we can actually access the data that we get passed from the action. And then we're going to get access to the email and password. And we're going to also get access to the error. And then we're going to say that the title of this page is login. And that we're going to create a section with the class of container below. And then we're going to create a form with the use enhance function. And by the way, this pluspage.svelte file is very similar to that of this create account page, but it just has some minor tweaks like removing the name input and changing the login. But essentially it's the same thing because you can see that instead of name, we just have email and password, and the heading is different, but the error is the same and the email and password inputs are the same. And then below this, we're going to create a function with the text of login. And instead of checking to see if the name is actually the correct length, we just check the email and the password. And below this, we link them to the create account page if they don't have an account. And essentially, we're going to create a style tag, and it's going to be very similar to the styles of the create account page. You can literally copy and paste. So right here, let's save this file, and let's close this right here. Now let's go over to the local host, and let's go over to login, and now let's log into the account we created previously. Now if we press enter, you see we logged in. And now if we try to access the /auth/login page, you see we're redirected back to /, so it's a protected route. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this video served you value. Let me know if you like this type of content. I'll see you in the next video.